Because if I'm not allowed to ask the questions, then I want to ask all the questions.
Yep.
Yeah, if there's any leftist listening, censorship doesn't work, kids. Just saying. Just saying. All right, let's go to the last one on the order of the day, and if we're lucky, we're gonna be under 2 hours again, even though we started very late. So, coming from SVT, SVT is the state television in Sweden. Husby to be the first to get feminist urban planning. And it goes like this. Women feel stared at and insecure when they walk across the square in Husby Center. In an attempt to break the male dominance in public places in the district, the owner of the center will, for the first time in Sweden, adapt the center using feminist urban planning. Among other things, it will move out a cafe where there are a lot of men. Women have not dared to wear a skirt. They feel that they had eyes on them and felt a discomfort from the subway on. It's a male dominated space, says Nurcan Gültekin, landscape coordinator for the Swedish Housing Authority. Nurcan Gültekin is definitely a Swedish name. No, it's not. Women are afraid and feel discomfort in the Husby Center. It was some of the conclusions that the Swedish Housing Authority got to offer extensive surveys and conversations. Got from after the extensive surveys and conversations with several female tenants. One of those who participated in the dialogue is Husby resident Esme Güler, here, another Turk, who is also active in the women's organization of the Social Democratic Party. She thinks that men act as if they own the center. Oh, so a Turkish Social Democrat partisan hack is also a misandrist feminist in Sweden. That's very shocking. But not all recognize themselves in this picture. Husby resident Habib Lofty, oh, there's another Swede, does not believe that women say they feel scared. In the square near the metro, there is a cafe where guests can drink tea and eat pastries while looking out over the square. It collected a lot of men and outside the cafe in the summer, which has led to many women feeling socially controlled and stared at, according to the Swedish Housing Authority that owns the center. As part of the feminist urban planning, the cafe should now move to another part of the square. On the new site, visitors are now going to get the same view of passing, are not going to get the same view of passing people and replace the cafe. To replace the cafe, there will be a food center and a cultural center to change the atmosphere in the square. The housing authority has also plans to improve the street lighting. This is believed to attract more women and children, but also female traders. The reporter asked, how will women be able to take a larger place in public space by moving a cafe? Answer. There is a structural change that needs to happen, but I think if we arrange safer spaces for women to and from the subway, it will make quite a lot of good to women in their daily lives. That's not an answer. But anyway, the Swedish Housing Authority is also planning to do something about the second part of the square and the metro upturns in collaboration with the SL, which is to Stockholm's local traffic. I don't think that needs translation. But what exactly they will do there is not yet clear. The SVT Stockholm news crew has spoken with the family that owns the cafe, but they do not want to appear on camera. The owners told me that they'd like to see more female visitors, but that male dominance is due to deep-seated structures in the area and that the move does not solve any of those problems. Quote, no superficial solutions such as moving the cafe will solve the problems that characterize the area. It is sad that we are having such a good position today to now get a worse location because of a solution which unfortunately will not affect the mentality of the people here, says one of the owners. Husby resident Esme Güller, here's another Swede, is however sympathetic to feminist urban planning. She hopes that the changes will lead to more women entrepreneurs and activities that strengthen women and others in the area, including job search assistance and driver's licenses. In order to accommodate, you have to make changes. It has been done before, and it can be done now. It's just about to get started, she adds. All right, so the reason why I mentioned Spot the Swede is because there are no Swedes in Husby. And I'll prove that with my own camera in June. Finding a Swede in Husby is extremely unlikely. It's like finding a Christian in Saudi Arabia. Maybe they exist, but it's very hard to find them.
Okay, just to recap, you've got You've got one group of people that says, hey, look, we're going to segregate the men from the women by moving this predominantly male used cafe to a more isolated location. So that way the women passing by don't have to shrink underneath the awesome fucking penis embodied power of the male gaze, right? That's what I'm getting so far.
Yep.
And you've got another group that says, we don't see what the problem here is at all. And then you've got another group that says, look, simply moving this cafe and rearranging a few things isn't going to help because you still have to contend with the awesome might, the overwhelming fucking power of male privilege given through their stare. These people sound like all these women that are complaining sound like a bunch of fucking pussies.
Now let's. I should probably also tell everyone that Husby is also the place that recently ended up in the international headlines as the place where feminists are running from because of the Muslim violence. So, I'm just saying.
I
Um,
mean, I think it's just violence committed by men who just maybe happen to be Muslims, but let's not talk about that. It's not Muslim violence. Come on.
yeah, well, it appears that some of the feminists that have moved out or are on the process of moving out from Husby, some of them have had uh, an aha moment when they realized that, hold on a second, I grew up in a male dominated neighborhood when I was a child, but it was, dominated by Swedish men. And throughout my entire childhood, I've never heard of any kind of violence happening, as in at all. The worst thing that would happen would be that some drunk dude would maybe break up a glass of beer outside the bar because potato. That was the worst thing, and it was in the news, in the local news, because it happened. So and now you have this neighborhood that, well, actually it's not the only one. There's so many of these kinds of no-go zones in Sweden, where this kind of thing doesn't even report. Breaking a glass, are you kidding me? We have some rapes to cover. um, so some of them are starting to wake up that, yeah, maybe it's not men, maybe it's culture, maybe it's something else.
Yeah. I mean, it's just putting it on coincidence is just not really plausible. Like with the, I mean, all these sort of stories about Sweden being the rape capital of the world, that's of course not true. It's largely because the definition is very different. But rapes counted like with the reasonable definition, they still have increased
Yes.
a lot
Oh,
in Sweden
quite a lot in
over
the
the
last
last
20
years.
years. Yes, yes. I mean,
All,
let's
all
not
I
forget.
know is all I know is that I'm dominating the hell out of my computer screen right now.
Whilst running pictures of Swedish women, I presume.
And did you ask its consent?
Hell no.
Well, let's not forget that Sweden changed its rape definition in 2015. But the increase has been noticeable at the very least since 2002. So 13 years before the definition has been changed. So yeah, sure, it may not be the rape capital of the world because they counted the wrong way or the feminist way, but nevertheless, it's been happening a lot more often than it used to happen at the turn of the century. It's just, it is what it is. And the article is correct when they say, well, the women can't really wear skirts in Husby. Yeah, that's true, but it's because it's a Sharia dominated area. It is also, I mean, I can definitely believe that a significant chunk of women feel uncomfortable in Husby. That's probably true. But then again, it's because it's a Sharia dominated area. I can definitely believe that there aren't too many female entrepreneurs in Husby, which they also complain in this article. I can definitely believe that too, but that is because it's a Sharia dominated area. Uh, I mean, they got the effects sort of right, but he got the cause entirely wrong.
Yeah, it's also funny how they like studiously avoid mentioning Islam wherever possible. It's like, yeah, it's just sort of these residents, and they have all these Islamic sounding names, but let's not
Not
mention the
just
elephant in the room.
that. Yeah, but the reason I emphasize the names is not just to emphasize that they're not Swedish, but they're all Turkish, which are the least likely Muslim demographic in Sweden to actually bring up religion every once in two sentences. Because if they had chosen the regular Husby resident, which is usually Arab, you'll definitely have sentences ending in Allahu Akbar. It's just the way it is. So the individuals quoted in this article are not your average Husby resident. They're the absolute exception because there aren't too many Turkish people living in not in Husby. There are many Turkish people living in Stockholm, but not in Husby. Because why? Because the Turks tend to be quite moderate, and they're like, no, we're not moving into a Muslim no-go zone. Thank you very much. We're gonna stay somewhere else, anywhere else. Thank you. So the fact that they were even able to find three different Turkish people to speak to in Husby, it's in itself fantastic. They must have spent an entire day in Husby trying to find these three guys.
Maybe the non-Turks just didn't want to talk about them and just cursed at them in Arabic.
Yeah, that's probably true. And again, this is not an exaggeration. Several news crews have had to contend with with not just with negativity but outright physical violence when they try to speak with people in public spaces in Husby. Most recently, it was an Australian TV crew that um, had to basically buy a new camera because one of them was smashed against the ground because the Husby residents weren't particularly happy of being videotaped. This is just the way it is, and instead of in, not just that they're not noticing it, they outright pretend that it doesn't exist, and this article from SVT is a very good example of fake news. Because this is what fake news actually looks like. It's not something that it just claims things didn't happen. That's basically usually what the Onion does. The Onion is a website that writes things that are outright not true. But what fake news is exactly this kind of thing. You take something that is probably true or mostly true, and then spin it to try to avoid what any person with some knowledge about the situation would actually expect to see, and try to spin it into something entirely different. So in this case, it's the center is patriarchal, so with the solution is feminist urban planning, whereas the reality is that the problem is Islam. It's not the lack of feminist urban planning or whatever nonsense the social democrats have concocted yesterday. Yeah. So isn't it nice? And again, I'm looking forward to go exactly there and videotape some stuff. I'll probably have some spare cameras with me in case the residents smash one of them against the ground, which might actually happen. I mean, I'm fully prepared to see that happening.
Right, definitely follow that.
Yeah, I'll go in June. I won't say the exact date because I don't want to get a welcoming committee in Sweden, but nevertheless, I will go, and it is definitely on the table to go visit several of these no-go zones with the hidden camera, and if I get lucky, because the thing is with these kinds of neighborhoods with Husby, same with Rosengård in Malmö, if you get lucky and you come into a nice day, that will be the day when the most violent elements in the neighborhood are away. During that period of the day, they're committing violence somewhere else. Then you can actually videotape and speak with some people with a very minor risk of being assaulted. But those days are very rare, so you have to be very lucky to get there and videotape like a civilized human being with a tripod and with clear images. Otherwise, hidden camera is the way.
Yep.
But don't worry, feminists will save you via feminist urban planning. I mean, I had to check if it's not a joke. Then I thought, oh, hold on a second, it's SVT. So yeah, SVT is a joke, but they're usually not that witty.
I mean, that
Um,
is going to combine the word feminist with just like everything. That's feminist economics, feminist snowplowing, feminist everything.
yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, this is the same city that has feminist snowplowing. We see how that worked out. It worked out very well. It made even the most incompetent mayors across Europe to look like geniuses in comparison with with the glorious program of feminist snowplowing. Yeah. Probably feminist urban planning will pretty much be the same. I mean, uh, I don't know which city in Europe has the most incompetent city architect, but probably that one would still be significantly better than uh, the feminist urban planning applied to Husby. SVT stands for Sveriges Television, but a friend of mine routinely says that SVT actually stands for Statligt Propagandaorgan för Visuellt Hjärntvätt och Tankekontroll, which would be the statist propaganda organ for visual manipulation and thought control. This is basically what this article is. I mean, it's not visual manipulation, but it's definitely thought control. Oh, we can't wear skirts because there's a cafe with many men there. Really? Really? I mean, how do you fight this kind of thing? And that will be this will be the last thing, and then we can wrap this up. But really, how do you fight this thing?
Yeah, I don't know actually. It's I guess you just have to constantly point out the hypocrisy that
Yes,
this
but this hypocrisy also comes from a previous train of thought. The idea that street harassment is such a serious. Oh my God! Someone catcalled you. How terrible! And I don't know how to fight that one because my first instinct is to yeah, boo, fucking who, get over it. That's my first instinct. Because I've been a quote unquote victim of street harassment several times, and that's what I did. Yeah, whatever. Just get over it. Is it really that offensive, well, it is offensive, but I don't care. Is it really that bad or that damaging to encourage individuals to be, adults?
And I mean, the vast majority of people and of a vast majority of women are adults about that. If they experience any kind of catcalling or something, they don't write a tear-stained article on the Guardian or something about that. They just get over it because it's just
Yeah.
something that happens, and it's just something you deal with. Like 99% of people are perfectly sensible about that. But
Yes, but
yeah,
the very least sensible of the sensible people are easily influenced by these kinds of columns and these kinds of shenanigans. That's why I'm interested in how to fight these kinds of things, precisely because of this.
yeah, I think it sort of goes back to this idea that I hit on earlier with these sacred values that we have to protect women. That's another sacred value, and
Mhm.
this idea that um, male sexuality is really dangerous, and we have to protect women from that.
Mhm.
Um, and that's something that I don't think that's something that's necessarily innate. If you look at past societies, we did have this sort of idea that um, male sexuality can be a very good thing, and also that female sexuality can also be a dangerous thing.
Mhm.
Um, but in today's society, we sort of at a point where um, dangers of female sexuality are sort of downplayed. It's not really taken very seriously. Um, and the dangers of male sexuality, we are sort of hyper aware of that.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think, on the one hand, feminism has contributed to that, but also sort of like recent conservative thought
Mhm.
that sort of very much emphasizes the idea that male sexuality is dangerous. That that rape is pretty much the worst thing that can possibly happen, and that
Yeah.
a woman who is raped is sort of spoiled by that. That she's now spoiled goods, and no one would want to, um, no one would want to marry her or something like that. That's an attitude that has been present in some societies in the past, not in others. So it's definitely not something that is like completely innate to our biology. It's something that is culture that we can change through cultural means, but it doesn't mean it's going to be easy to change, or that there's a sort of obvious way of changing that. So just because something is cultural doesn't mean you can just like turn a few switches and write a few laws and then everything is going to be fine.
Yeah, no, it's probably a much more complex than that.
Yeah, changing culture is really, really hard, and it's not clear that it's a problem that is going to be solvable in the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Best case scenario, our grandchildren might see the first changes in that. All right. Then, with that said, I guess we'll see you all in 2 weeks from now. I guess happy Easter for everyone that does celebrate Easter. I'll celebrate it through work. I'm gonna compose new videos. Uh, and also, of course, tomorrow I have another regular podcast that I have to attend to. So, I'll just continue working. But then next week, exactly on April 21st, there's definitely no chance that I can end up in time to actually broadcast. So with that, I'm out of things to say.
Yeah, in the meanwhile, I would invite you to take a look at my blog, which is at orthogonalideas.com. See if you find something that's interesting there. And until then, have a good Easter and see you in 2 weeks. And until then, take the red pill.
Take the red pill. Goodbye, everyone.